Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. Glad you are with us. We have as our guest Phil Cobucci. He's the founder of Inclusion Tennessee for the LGBTQ community. New organization. We've kind of just explained all that you are hoping to accomplish and all that you're doing. And as we went to break, I said we're going to talk about your story, which you were willing to share, which I appreciate. Why did you? I already asked why you decided to start this. Just tell us your story. Why, again, you feel like this is so needed from your personal perspective.
Yeah. So I grew up in a very conservative environment. I grew up in the Northeast, and grew up in a very conservative religious environment. Truly loving parents who thought that they were raising me in the best way that they could, but they really didn't know how to raise a kid who was different, right? And I had a lot of struggles in my life. At 13 years old, I was sexually assaulted by a leader in the church. And when I was 16 years old, I had a number of leaders in the church, their children accused me of some really horrible things. And my life literally took these tumultuous turns that were so emotionally heavy and wrought that I questioned everything about my existence. And in doing so, those things challenged not only my faith, but also challenged my relationship with myself and my relationship with my family. At the same time, I also identify and realize that I am a gay man. And so I'm also struggling and identifying with that reality as well. I came out multiple times to my family when I was in my teenage years. Not getting the support that I needed. When I was 18 years old, I was sent to conversion therapy, and I'm a product of that. And so...
Wow, you went to conversion therapy.
Yeah.
At 18. Mm-hmm. And now, what was that? How did that work? What was that like?
So conversion therapy is exactly what you think it is. They make an attempt to change your sexuality, your sexual identity, through the use of faith practices and religious practices. This was not to the level of some things that you may know, where it's, or you may have heard of, where it's like electrical therapy and all those kind of like deep things, but it was all very mental and very emotional in its therapeutic practices. And in doing so, 9 months of this therapy, I was, and I should use the term therapy, because it really again ripped this sense of who I was away from any kind of relationship that I could have with any kind of faith experience for me. And so in that reality, I struggled immensely with who I was, how I identified my the reality of my existence, and there was a lot of struggle. And so once I was finally able to escape that experience, I was then sent to a conservative Christian college that continued to preach that I was, as a gay person, less than, diminished, not valid. And so for a majority of my 20s, I was feeling like I didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't feel like I could ever thrive. I didn't feel like I could ever be a member of society that fully could be someone that could give back to my community and to be something of worth and value. And there's a lot of pain that still comes with all that, right? But I went through college, started my career in the music business, moved back to New York City, started my career there, and then set my sights on Nashville. And I moved to Nashville almost 13 years ago, and didn't continue my career in the music business.
Really? Wow, what is your relationship now with your parents?
It exists, but it's not strong, sadly, and it is what it is.
Do they accept your?
No.
They, and it sounds like what they were trying to do all along is they were saying there's a problem to be fixed here.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And
I, I'm almost 40 years old now, and I do not hold my parents accountable, because at the end of the day, what they thought they were doing was what they thought was best. And that's okay. I have forgiven that. But for me, what I have learned is that I can now use these experiences to help others. I buried myself in starting a business here in Nashville, and I continued to do that work for 12 years. I lost everything in 2020 between COVID and a tornado and a couple of other things. And I went through hell in 2020, as so many people did. And in doing so, my path was made clear. And so I was able to take a step back and say, all of this stuff that I have tried to work for, all of this money, all of this attention in a business, doesn't mean anything anymore. And so what I was able to say is, okay, 2019, we spent all this time doing this research on this community that I loved. This is the one thing that still makes my heart tick, and is my heart work. And so that's what birthed Inclusion Tennessee.
So you're taking that and run with it.
Yeah. And so now I can use the story of my existence.
What is your relationship with religion now?
It's hard. It really is. I respect it, and I can speak to it day in and day out.
Because you were raised.
Because
you went to church a lot.
I was raised in it, fully. And I appreciate it. I respect it. It is a hard thing for me to navigate. But the one thing that I do know is that there is still very much a God that loves me and a God that loves my community. And that's what matters.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. That's not easy. Thank you. All right, we have Lily here, who wanted to wait until you were done with your story. Lily, hello.
Well, hey, y'all. Mr. Hall, what's the first name of your guest?
Phil.
Phil?
Phil. Phil.
Phil, thank you for coming to Nashville. I want to address something that Mike said. I've heard Mike call into your show quite a few times over the years, Mr. Hall. And he's a very intelligent man, and he's a very caring and compassionate man. You can tell by the topics that he calls in on. But, just for the sake of, what this Phil was talking about, Nashville used to have a place called the Pineapple House, and that's the first place that I met Dr. Richardson. And they were trying way back then, because a lot of people realized where we were at the Buckle here. And they were trying to network people and get people together. But I think that the issue still came up and over. Listening to Phil's story, it didn't sound like Phil self-medicated. A lot of people in his situation would have. It seems like he took the anger and the pain and diverted it into something constructive and beautiful. And I think that the gay community in Nashville, it's about time that they had a place like this, because I think when the Pineapple House relocated, I would go over there and get information to help young people and other people and find out what other thing is there other than a bar. And it just seemed like a lot of gay people were stuck on the stereotypical bar scene. And I think that's part of why people judge gay people, because they think that all gay people are like that, and they're not. And as far as helping gay men with AIDS and stuff, back in the mid-'80s, Meharry College was the only, Meharry Medical Center, and this is before they were associated with General Hospital, were the only medical people in this community that stepped up. Not only did they treat young men with HIV, but they also had group support for them, included with women that were coming in, prostitutes and whatnot. And they had one of the best social workers I've ever met in my life, and she was dedicated. It's a wonder she didn't burn out. If anybody knows who that woman was, I think that somebody needs to tell her story, because she was on her own in the beginning. So what I would like to know is, if you create a community center, you know, can people that are gay of low income, are they going to be able to come in and participate, or is it going to have to be, you know, you have to have some money and stuff like that, you know?
All right, that's a good question. Lily, all right, thank you. Thank you for
You're welcome.
that whole
Bye-bye.
call. All right, what about that?
That's a great question. We are hopeful and completely focused on making this a facility that everyone can access, everyone can participate in. This is not a for-profit institution. This is not a facility that is going to be you know, where you need thousands of dollars to become a member. This is not a Soho House. While that's fun and great and wonderful, that's not what we are. If you can afford a cup of coffee, then you can come in and, you know, you can use the cafe, but you don't have to afford a cup of coffee. If you want to need to use a computer lab, there will probably be a computer lab for you. But at the same time, we are also looking at partnerships with other organizations that provide other services as well. All right. And so as we continue to grow and as we continue to form these relationships throughout the community, there's going to be opportunities to serve every single body.
Very good. Well, thank you again for sharing your story. Lily, thanks for calling in. We'll take a break, come back with more calls, more questions. We'll be back right after this.